Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, education lovers. Welcome to the program. We are so excited to have you here joining us for this week's installment of Big Ideas in Education. I'm Ryan Kairalla from Doral College. We are happy to be joined this week by Andi Morency, the Executive Director and Principal of the Honors Academy of Literature Charter School in Reno, Nevada. Our guest school employs daily usage of evidence-based practices in children's literature to teach material. Our guest also employs an innovative AI-driven professional development model on her campus. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.academyoflit.org. Dr. Morency, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I have really enjoyed reading about the Honors Academy of Literature. I have a soft spot in my heart for Nevada charter schools in general, and I always love the ones that employ particularly cool, innovative models, which your school definitely does. Can you tell the viewers and listeners a bit about what makes your school so special?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an independent charter school. That means that we operate as our own school and our own school district. That isn't very common here in Nevada. Most charter schools have an EMO or a CMO that is their organizing entity. Often those entities are who go through the application process and getting the school up and running. We did that in more of a grassroots efforts. We just had a group of really passionate educators who got together and got the ball rolling to get our institution open. We've been open since 2012, so a little over 10 years at this point, and have just loved the opportunity to be able to fill a gap and a need for our students and for our teachers in Northern Nevada.
Well, when you talk about a grassroots charter school, I mean, you are that for sure. In fact, you were the founder of this school, and you founded it as a mom. Just what an amazing story. I think I read that you're a mom and you were just looking for a certain kind of school for your own kids. And so you built this program, completely from the ground up as an independent charter school. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct. I was at the university here in Reno working on a PhD in education in a bunch of schools doing research, but my kids weren't in school yet. I work for my PhD, and I was just grappling with the idea of where I was going to send my kids to school. And it really started as a joke. Somebody was like, well, you should start a charter school. And as a full-time doc student and new mom, I just really laughed at that idea at the beginning, like, oh yeah, in all my free time, that's what I'm going to do. But the seed was planted and the idea really resonated. I knew that I wanted to have some control over my children's education. I knew I was going to be that parent who was in the office every other day, like, oh, sure, we'll do whatever you want. Just show me the brain research to back it up. And so really this gave me an opportunity to be able to design and develop that school that I wanted for my children. And 230 other kids get to benefit every year as well. My oldest has now graduated. He's attending high school, and I have 3 more who are still here with me. But in just about 5 years, all of my 4 children will have gone through our school. It's been such an incredible experience to really have such hands-on without homeschooling.
Well, getting a charter school off the ground is no easy task. Did you know what you were getting yourself into when you first conceived of, I'm going to start my own charter?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. The original plan was, I'll help through the application process. I'll get things up and running. But I had these grand plans of being in academia, why I was getting the PhD. But it got down to where we were getting ready to open the school, and it didn't make sense to hire out and have somebody fulfill the vision. So I took on the role of the executive director and the principal, and my co-founder sat in that role as well for a couple of years before she moved back to the DC area. And it just made sense to have us who really had the vision then go out and implement it.
Well, the vision of your school is a pretty interesting one. It's what I love most about talking to people who start charters is that all of these charters always have a unique approach to education. They always do something new, something a little different, something innovative. And your school is the first school I've heard of that centers children's literature around its teaching model. I think that's really, really cool. As a new dad myself, I'm very immersed in children's literature at the moment. What gave you the idea of using children's literature as a foundational element for your education program? And can you walk us through what that looks like in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was teaching, we had an adopted basal program that we used for reading instruction, and there were references to great books. There were excerpts from great books, but my students never had those books in their hands. And I think without having the actual real life text in classrooms, we really do a disadvantage to students because they never see themselves as readers. When they aren't holding the actual book in their hand, they're just looking at an excerpt of it, or even if it's the whole book in a textbook, it doesn't have the same feel. When I go home and I read, and I'm an avid reader, I never sit at my desk and open a large textbook and read through it and answer questions. I'm cuddled up on the couch with that book in my hand and really having those great comfort feelings and emotions. And so we wanted to be able to implement that more into school. Our goal is that we're creating lifelong lovers of learning and reading. And so we feel that having actual literature, having trade books in the classroom is one of the ways to do that. The other thing that we really focus on is not just the literature, but the literacy demands in all content areas. It is a big misconception. We get asked that question all the time. Well, like, how do you only teach reading? And that's not the case. We do teach all content aligned with Nevada state standards, but we focus on the literacy demands in each of those content areas. We're in this really unique spot in history where basically anything you want to learn, you can find free access online. But to do that, you have to be able to, one, access that text, be able to look at it critically, know what good sources are, what poor sources are, and be able to make meaning from that information. We're incredibly blessed to be in this time in history where all that abundance of information is there. And we really feel like it's our job to prepare students to be able to engage with all of those free online resources and free access. We also know that about 65% of jobs that we're preparing students for today don't exist yet. So making sure that we're creating students who can work together in groups, who have critical thinking, can collaborate, can identify problems, answer questions, is really at the core of what we do. It's long gone are the days of a list of standards, and if you just check those off, by goodness, you can get a job.
Well, that's an interesting perspective to me because it sounds like your approach to getting students ready for the jobs of the future is almost going back to the tried and true methods of education. You know, you're suggesting that the way we get students ready for the jobs of the future is to get them excited about reading real books, allowing them, as you noted, to be able to curl up in a chair and fall in love with an actual book as opposed to something on a tablet or just an excerpt from a book in a textbook, which sounds like a really good way to make people dislike reading. You want to get people back falling in love with reading again because it's such a foundational element to education.
Absolutely. Falling in love with the stories. In our classrooms, oftentimes you'll see as early literacy, approaches to early literacy instruction, teachers will use nonsense words or easy readers that really don't make any sense. And we very intentionally do not have that type of reading material here at our school because that's reading for the sake of reading, not reading for the love of reading or not reading to make meaning. And we want to really start from a very foundational age that reading is for meaning making and for the love of the story.
Man, I hope that our editors listen to that right there. If you're looking for the quote to isolate this week, don't have students read for the sake of reading. Have them read for the love of reading. Man, you're making our editing team's job a lot easier. That was a fantastic quote right there. Now, you know, when I also don't want people to think of your school as this school that just doesn't embrace technology at all and just has a bunch of students reading paper books. In fact, your school does a lot of investment in technology, particularly in the area of professional development. I read that you guys are using a lot of AI-driven and tech-focused professional development models like the Edthena platform to do professional enrichment for your teachers. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Technology is an essential component of preparing students for the future. So absolutely, we're one-to-one with Chromebook for our technology and then also on our professional development platform. So what we're doing in about 2017, we worked with a company to develop our own teacher evaluation framework. The state of Nevada has an adopted evaluation process for teachers, but charter schools are able to choose to use that same model or have their own. So we looked at a wide range of models. First, what we did was we started with some consensus building activities about what is important, what components need to be included in teacher evaluation. And we started there and then looked at different models and how they achieved those goals. Once we had a sense of, what we really wanted, we picked and chose and begged and borrowed and steal, and we made a evaluation framework that works for us. And it's centered around this idea of triads. So each teacher is in a peer triad. They work together throughout the year and they provide each other with feedback on their instruction all throughout the year. And that's really the core of what informs our teacher evaluation framework. So what we've been doing this year, and this has been a shift coming back off of distance learning and COVID and all the things. Finding substitutes was really, really difficult. So in our triad model, there is always a teacher who's teaching, a individual who's assigned as the coach, and an individual who's assigned as the note taker. So that means that we need 2 to 3 subs for every time that this observation happens. And it's really, really tricky to get 2 to 3 subs in a building at the same time. So we had to go back and really look at the foundation of what we had designed and how it could happen now. So what we do now is we use AI coaching and Edthena to be able to still have these triads function. So all teachers video themselves teaching a lesson. Most teachers have an idea of what they want to focus on, but they don't have to. They upload that video into the AI coaching, and really all it is really high quality cognitive coaching. The AI is asking them prompting questions. They're responding to those questions. That's driving the learning. And at the end of that, they have a focus area, something that they want to work on. Once they have that focus area, they're sharing that with their triad group, and they upload another video of their instruction. Once their video is uploaded, their peers are able to go into that video, watch it, stop it, make comments. In their comments, they're able to align those comments to our professional rubric. So it really ties it again right back into that evaluation, and provide feedback throughout the year. So we go through 3 of these triad cycles every year. And teachers, sometimes they have the same strategy or focus in each of those. Sometimes it shifts. And all of that informs their overall evaluation framework.
Could you take a step back for me on the piece you mentioned about AI, just to make sure I understand? What role specifically is artificial intelligence playing in the PD process? Like, you are uploading video footage to the AI platform, and the AI platform is doing what with it?
Yeah, that's really that cognitive coaching piece. So it's asking the teacher to think critically about their practice, to dive more deeply into what they're doing and why they're doing it. And it really helps our teachers identify gaps in their thinking about their instruction. So it sometimes will prompt them to ask a question, asking a question about employing a specific strategy. And that might not be a strategy that the teacher has considered or might not be familiar with. And then it'll provide that teacher with additional resources on how to effectively implement that strategy in their classroom.
That is really, really cool. I could definitely see the obviously terrific use case there. I got one more question for you before we get to our final question. We've done over 200 episodes of Big Ideas in Education, most of them interviews with terrific educators just like you. And to my knowledge, I believe you are the first guest we have had that has been actively involved in the rodeo. You work with the Reno Rodeo. I've always wanted to, I live down in Miami, Florida. We don't got too many rodeos where we are, but I think it looks really cool when I've seen it on television or something like that. And so I guess my question for you is, one, can you tell us a bit about that experience? And two, are there any lessons that you've learned working in rodeos that you've been able to adapt into education?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is true. As one of my volunteer things that I do outside of my work and job is I'm a director for the Reno Rodeo, and I oversee their policy and procedure committee and strategic plan and some finance stuff. So it's really fun to get to use those skills in support of an organization that does incredible work in support of youth in our community. But really, I will say my main takeaway and what I can share is the catchphrase for our rodeo this year that's always picked by the president. And this year it's rub some dirt on it. Sometimes you just need to get up, rub some dirt on it, and move along, especially in education. I like to tell people that if I could control everybody, my job would be very boring and very simple. But that's not the case. So many times in education, we're responding to what's presented to us. We do our very best to be proactive, and but sometimes things just come up and you got to rub some dirt on it and get back to work.
Yep. And when the days get really busy and crazy, try to hang on for at least 8 seconds, of course.
At least. Yeah, no doubt.
Our guest has been Dr. Andi Morency. She is the Executive Director and Principal of the Honors Academy of Literature Charter School in Reno, Nevada. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting academyoflit.org. This has been a really fun interview. I have thoroughly enjoyed learning about your school. Before we let you go, we got one last question for you. If with the snap of your fingers you could make any change to the education system, what change would it be?
Oh, this is such a hard question, such a big question. I think for me, it would be moving away from fidelity and industrial models. In so many cases in education right now, we're focused on the normal curve, what works for the peak in that normal curve. But education is really a personal endeavor. You would never expect to go into the doctor's office and have a whole, list of unique symptoms, but none of that mattered. They would just look at your age and assign a specific regimen to you. Education is very much the same way. Not all kids are ready for the same thing at the same time. So when we impose fidelity models on those students, we really are missing what it means to be educated for a large group of students. I always try to keep in mind as we're making decisions in our school, the idea that a fish will never feel successful if the only way he's measured is on how well he can climb a tree. And so what does it mean to educate whole people and whole students and not just run them through the academic factory model?
Thank you for reminding us of that very, very important notion that we never want to lose sight of in education. This has been a real treat. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this week.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all for checking out Big Ideas in Education.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.